As the story begins, the scene opens in the northwestern Gildia forest. A girl is fighting what she believes is just a pack mule. Suddenly, a boy appears from behind, and she wonders who he is. He shouts to the group that the monster is caught in a trap, and its weakness lies in its leg tendons. He urges them to cut the tendons and immobilize it. A girl drops down from a tree with a dagger, slashes the pack mule's leg, and calls for Clark to finish it. Clark steps forward and slashes the monster down. The first boy, Phone, praises everyone, asking if they are all right. He is a member of the hero's party. But then Clark, the hero, suddenly tells Phone to leave the party, shocking him with the abrupt announcement. Sarah, the martial artist, remarks that someone who hides in the back and merely backseat guides others is useless. Jasmine, the swordswoman, adds that being seen with a plain, unremarkable person like Phone would damage her handsome brother Clark's image. Phone tries to defend himself, saying he did try to find the enemy's nest and weaknesses and had been setting traps. He looks to Mary the magician for support, but she fumbles. When Phone pushes her slightly in desperation, Clark steps in, saying it must have been hard for Mary to endure. Phone apologizes for not noticing earlier. Mary apologizes as well, saying she feels safer with Clark around. Clark questions Phone, asking whether he even hit the monster's weak point or broke its shell earlier, since that was supposed to be his role as an assassin. Clark finishes by saying he has no need for a mere errand boy and orders Phone to leave. Now, at the Gildia Adventurers Guild, Phone sits at a shop crying. The shopkeeper notes that he was kicked out of Clark's party and returned alone yesterday. Phone admits he thought he was contributing to the hero's party in his own way, but perhaps he didn't train enough to be useful. He tells himself that someone like him cannot help anyone, and no one will hire him. At that moment, a girl approaches and asks if he is looking for a job. Confused, Phone confirms. She explains that she wants to take a quest, but it is in a mountainous area and she typically works alone. She needs someone to help carry supplies. She offers 1 silver coin as payment, admitting she is short on money and really just needs assistance. Phone immediately agrees, saying he will do anything she asks. The girl assumes that since he was fired, he must be useless in combat, but at least suitable as an errand boy. She introduces herself as Claude Deforin, an archer. Phone introduces himself as an assassin. Surprised and delighted, Chloe hurries off to accept the quest. Meanwhile, Clark and his team arrive at the guild with the defeated pack mule. The receptionist praises them for already completing their mission and expresses relief at their safe return. Clark dismisses it as an easy job against a weak magic beast and asks whether the receptionist recruited the members he requested the other day. Phone is shocked to learn Clark had been recruiting new members even before the last mission. The receptionist introduces Patris, a knight. Patris expresses how honored she is to fight alongside a hero. Clark embraces her in welcome, then notices Phone nearby and questions why he is still in town. Back at the guild, Clark suddenly snatched Chloe's adventurer letter and questioned whether she was Phone's new employer. After reading it, he remarked that delivering a great wolf fang would be difficult for them. Phone quickly took the letter back and urged Chloe to return with him. When she asked about the request form, Phone showed it to her. Chloe was amazed, realizing she had never even seen him take it, and wondered when that happened. Jasmine commented that Phone was surprisingly good at being sneaky, leaving Clark stunned. The receptionist then informed Clark about a monster subjugation request that a hero should accept. Clark replied that they had a new member now, so it was the perfect time to test their abilities. Far north in the mountain region near Gildia, Chloe thought about Phone's former party and called Clark a little freak. Phone carried her luggage on his back, and she asked whether he was okay. He assured her he was. Chloe mentioned that Clark wore the hero's crest, meaning he really was a hero. It was her first time seeing one, but his attitude was extremely unpleasant. Phone admitted that Clark's swordsmanship and magic were amazing, and he had hoped to support the party quietly from the back. However, he felt he wasn't very useful when everyone else already excelled in battle. Chloe acknowledged that assassins specialized in ambushes and traps, not brute force fighting, so they wouldn't fit well into a power-focused team. To her, this felt more like having a servant, but at least it meant she was safe. As they climbed, Phone explained that their target was a great fang wolf, a cautious magical beast that lived deep in the forest. Chloe agreed, saying tracking such prey took time, which was why she had packed heavily. She expressed how glad she was to have asked Phone to help, praising him for climbing effortlessly while carrying so much weight. Happy to be useful, Phone thanked her. Soon he spotted signs on the ground, wild rabbit droppings and tracks, and noticed the wind direction. He climbed a tree to survey the area and pointed out an animal trail. Chloe stared in shock, calling his movement inhuman. While she suggested they should slow down since finding the wolf would take all day, Phone disagreed. He revealed that he had already located great wolf fur, meaning they were in its territory. Meanwhile, Clark's party wandered a dry wasteland. Jasmine complained, asking if Clark was sure this was the right direction, whining about hunger and exhaustion. She grumbled that they hadn't seen a single monster, and this was why she disliked hunting small fry like a two-headed boar. Clark, confused, wondered why they hadn't run into the monster yet, since they usually just stumbled onto enemies without effort. Sarah reminded Jasmine that she was carrying everyone's belongings, only to be called a nagging old hag in return. Mary tried to calm them down. Patris offered to go scout while the rest rested, but Clark snapped at her not to get overconfident and demanded to know what they would do if a monster found them instead. Suddenly, the two-headed boar appeared before Clark's group. Mary froze in fear as she realized they had wandered right into its nest. Jasmine insisted they should finish it quickly and launched an attack, but the boar remained completely unharmed. Panic spread through the party as Clark demanded to know what they were doing and ordered Mary to synchronize her spell with him. She cast her magic, yet it had no effect. Clark then turned to Patris, asking where the monster's weak point was. Patris explained that weaknesses weren't something one could easily identify unless they were a veteran adventurer who had slain hundreds of the same creature. Clark immediately thought that Phone would have known the answer for any magical beast in an instant. Meanwhile, in the forest, Phone told Chloe they were in Great Fang Wolf territory and could be attacked at any moment. He urged caution. They soon saw deer running in panic, and Phone warned that something was approaching. Chloe told him to be careful, fired an arrow at a deer, and suggested the animals must be fleeing from a threat. Suddenly, a deer lunged toward her, but Phone reacted instantly, throwing a dagger and stopping it. He checked whether she was all right, and Chloe thanked him for saving her. Moments later, numerous wolves emerged from the shadows. Phone recognized them immediately as great tusk wolves and noted he had expected this. Chloe was stunned, having assumed it would take an entire night to locate just one. Yet here they were surrounded by so many. She muttered that the wolves were seeing them as an all-you-can-eat buffet of prey. Then she spotted a massive wolf, clearly different from the rest, and wondered if it was the pack leader. Before she could react, it lunged toward her, startling her completely. Phone struck swiftly, intercepting the alpha wolf, grabbing it by the neck, and kicking it away. He asked if Chloe was okay, and she realized he had saved her again. His movements, judgment, and precision were far beyond an ordinary adventurer. This was no simple assassin. Confused and amazed, she asked who he really was. Phone replied calmly that, in this world, he was the last of his kind. He was a ninja. Phone stepped in front of Chloe to protect her, and she wondered if he truly was a ninja. A wolf rushed toward them, and Phone struck it again. Soon, more wolves appeared. Chloe asked if he could handle this many, and he assured her that he wouldn't let anything happen to her. He focused on the pack and told her she only needed to aim for the biggest one. When Chloe realized that might be the leader, Phone explained that the other wolves were wary of that one, likely a rogue male trying to take over the pack. If they subdued him, the rest wouldn't attack. He handed her a bottle and told her to coat an arrow with the poison and take aim. Then, asking Chloe to turn away for a moment, he used a ninjutsu lightning technique, creating a blinding flash. Chloe hesitated, noting that shooting blindly would just bounce off its thick fur. She questioned what she was supposed to target, and then fired at the leader. At the same moment, Phone set a trap with a rope. In an instant, the leader wolf was caught, leaving Chloe amazed. She asked if the wolves were dead, and Phone said they were only unconscious, with her anesthetic already working, so it was safe. Chloe noticed the remaining wolves backing off and not attacking. Phone then drew his dagger and cut one of the leader wolf's fangs. Chloe looked confused, but he handed the fang to her, saying there was no longer any threat. Those fangs wouldn't rampage again. With that, the wolves retreated. Phone told Chloe they should descend the mountain before the leader woke, and casually asked if they should bring the deer along for dinner. Chloe looked surprised and asked if he could really carry it. That night, Phone cooked their meal. Chloe looked at the food, surprised that a ninja could cook like this. Phone explained that he had always prepared meals for Clark and the others. When Chloe tasted it, she found it delicious and asked if he could actually cook something this good even while camping. Then Phone quietly took out a small ration and ate it. Chloe noticed and asked why he wasn't eating the real food. He replied that he was fine with soldier rations. She said she wanted to eat together. Even when he mentioned he usually ate unpleasant rations alone, she insisted, and he finally shared the meal with her. Chloe then wondered if the hero was having such a peaceful journey and if he was doing well without Phone. Phone simply said cooking wasn't difficult, and if it were his master, it would be even better. That made Chloe curious about his master, asking if he meant the ninja master. She then asked what a ninja truly was. Fon said their rules forbade them from speaking of it. He explained that they were a hidden group serving their lord from the shadows, eliminating evil, and living lives that must remain unknown. To be a ninja meant to live and die unseen, with no name, no family, and no past. Chloe was shocked. Fon continued, saying the second Vaughn had died long ago, and that was when he inherited the name as the third Vaughn, now the last ninja remaining. Chloe then asked why all the ninjas had disappeared, and Fon explained that it was simply the flow of time. Gradually, the art faded, and he alone remembered how to live as a ninja. He went to the city of Gildia, hoping his skills could still be useful there. Since he couldn't list ninja as a profession at the guild, he chose the closest option, and that was when he first met Clark's team. A ninja could never forget loyalty to their master, and his master's words echoed through his mind when Clark once said he believed Fon was the one and asked him to dedicate himself. Fon then remembered the day he begged Clark to let him join the party, offering to do anything and pleading to use his strength for them. Chloe became upset, and Fon said that after making such a dramatic vow, it was only natural he would be dismissed for being useless and causing trouble. Chloe disagreed angrily, insisting it was not his fault, and that Clark had clearly taken advantage of him and planned to discard him. She admitted she assumed the same, that Fon was just being used. She apologized, realizing she had also tried to treat him like a cheap tool. Fon answered calmly that he didn't mind, that this was the fate of ninjas, but Chloe rejected that idea, saying he was not someone meant to be used and thrown away. Just because he was a ninja did not mean that was all he deserved. He had saved her again and again that day. Then, gently and without commanding him, she asked if he would join her party instead. Fon was surprised, but admitted he had been thinking the same thing. He realized then how delicious food becomes when shared with friends, and tears fell from his eyes. Chloe asked about the ration pill, and Fon explained that it was a nutritious cure-all, offering her some. She tried it and immediately found it bitter. The next day, when they delivered the wolf fangs, the merchant praised the size, quality, and speed. He added 5 silver coins as a bonus. The receptionist said it was good that Fon had partnered with Chloe. Chloe confidently told her to leave everything to her, saying that no matter what the request was, Fon was amazing. When Chloe asked Fon if there was any quest he wanted to try, Clark's team suddenly returned. Chloe wondered if it was the hero's party and if they had failed. Clark's group sat down and Fon rushed over, worried. He asked what had happened. Mary explained they had gone to subjugate a 2-headed boar, but it attacked them instead. Patris apologized, and Mary insisted Patris had done well, but she couldn't understand why things didn't work this time, since she always fought the way Fon taught her. Fon calmly explained that every creature has slightly different weaknesses and told them to study carefully. He added that fire would not work if the boar was covered in wet dirt, and separating it from its nest was important first. He expressed relief that they were safe and offered to treat their wounds. Suddenly, Sarah grew furious, threw her food, and told him not to mess with her. Clark then confronted Fon, accusing him of coming to mock them and calling him a useless baggage handler. Chloe stepped forward and demanded to know who they were calling incompetent. She introduced herself as Fon's current party member. With anger, she pointed out that Clark had only succeeded so far because Fon had supported them from the shadows, and not realizing that only made them incompetent themselves. Fon tried to calm her, but Chloe argued that he always got used and walked over because he was too kind. Sarah snapped at them to stay out of it, but Mary stopped her, pointing out everyone was watching. Then a woman approached from behind. Seeing Sarah waste Sasha's food, she punched her hard and declared it clan law. Anyone who wasted food would be punished. Sasha claimed that Sarah ruined her meal and insisted the Trail tribe never tolerated those who broke rules. Sarah stood up, saying she had no idea what tribe Sasha came from, but she would not let her get away with this, especially after laying hands on a martial artist from the hero's party. Sarah rushed to attack, but Sasha stopped her punch with ease, lifted her, and threw her aside. Sasha then began striking Sarah, asserting that she came here to defeat the strong, and she could not afford to lose, as that was the rule. Fon rushed in from behind and grabbed Sasha's arm, telling her the match was already decided and demanding she stop. Sasha reminded him that duels were a Trail tribe custom fought to the death, and questioned who he was. Fon introduced himself, but Sasha said interfering in a warrior's battle was an insult. The guild master arrived, ordering Sasha Trail to stop immediately and warning that if she caused more trouble, her guild registration would be revoked. Phone then stated that if Sasha insisted her rules were broken, he would fight her next time, asking her to forgive Sarah for now. Sasha acknowledged that Phone was stronger than the women and accepted, promising to fight him the next time they met. Phone released her arm, and Sasha walked away, reminding him not to forget the promise. Phone instructed the clerk to take Sarah to the clinic immediately, but Clark snapped back, telling him not to give orders. The guild master thanked Phone, and Phone explained that Sasha was a Trail tribe member. The guild master admitted they had been concerned when she registered, considering the tribe's temperament. Meanwhile, Sasha accepted a quest. The guild master then mentioned finding an old record about the Trail tribe, describing them as a warlike people. Caravans used to hire guards specifically to pass through their territory. When Phone asked about robbery, the guild master clarified that Sasha only sought to challenge the strong, as her tribe lived by the rule that the strongest was absolute. Yet recently, their numbers had dwindled, and they had not been seen for over a decade. Now Sasha had just registered and immediately picked one of the most dangerous quests available. Chloe asked what kind of quest it was, and the guild master revealed it was a goblin subjugation in a cave. Chloe froze in fear and asked if goblins were truly dangerous. The guild master confirmed, explaining that 5 parties had entered and never returned, and the request had even been posted in nearby towns. Clark walked off, calling the group immature and saying dealing with small fry suited them. He added that there were rumors goblins targeted women. Jasmine panicked, saying she was too cute and would definitely get attacked. Chloe whispered that they never stopped chattering and told Phone they should find another place for the night if the girls were staying at the inn above, but Phone remained deep in thought. Meanwhile, Sasha stood outside the goblin cave, shouting boldly before charging inside. The moment she spotted goblins, she began cutting them down without hesitation. Goblins fled in panic, and Sasha demanded they stay and fight. Chasing them deeper, she reached a dead end. Suddenly, an arrow shot from behind, barely missing her. As she turned to strike back, another arrow hit, this time with force, and her body went numb, collapsing to the ground. When she regained consciousness, she found she could not move, realizing the arrow had been coated with poison. A huge monster approached as goblins cheered from above. In that moment, Sasha understood the truth. This cave was the creature's nest, and the goblins lured adventurers here to feed it. Even as the beast loomed closer, Sasha reaffirmed her pride as a Trail tribe warrior. She told herself she would defeat powerful foes and carve her name into legend. But suddenly, she spotted Phone above on the cavern ceiling. Phone eliminated the goblins overhead, sending them crashing down onto the monster. He rushed to Sasha, administered an antidote, and carried her. When goblins followed, Chloe fired arrows, urging Phone to leave the remaining targets and flee. Phone leaped high, and Chloe was shocked by his incredible leg strength. Moments later, goblin arrows whizzed toward them. Phone explained the arrows were tipped with animal venom-coated fangs, and Chloe admitted she had never seen goblins use such tactics, likely why all previous adventurers were defeated. Sasha regained consciousness, insisting she did not need help and accusing Phone of being in her way. Phone calmly told her the medicine was only now taking effect, and urged everyone to escape. Chloe wondered aloud what they were running from, just as the massive monster burst into view again. Terrified, Chloe asked what it was. Phone guessed it was the owner of those earlier poisoned arrowheads. He said its bones were probably weakened from his earlier strike and was grateful he had prepared at the entrance. Chloe ignited an arrow and told Phone she would handle the monster. He only needed to shoot at the explosives. A moment later, the cave erupted in a violent explosion. Sasha asked if Phone was a wizard, but he explained it was fire-style jujutsu performed with gunpowder, not magic. After escaping far from the cave, they rested. Chloe marveled at the power of gunpowder. Phone checked on Sasha, who angrily demanded to know why he helped her, asking if it was a rule or a mission. Phone replied that it was neither. To him, human life mattered more than any rule, and that was simply who he was. As Sasha looked away, Phone asked whether she planned to thank him. Instead, Sasha brought up the goblin corpses, saying they were buried and no one would find them, and wondered what the guild would say. Phone replied that the guild would simply see the aftermath and assume he and his group had exterminated the goblins. Sasha grew furious, declaring she would defeat Phone next, since he had slain goblins and even a giant lizard, because she considered herself the strongest. Phone tried to calm her, but she shouted for silence and prepared to strike for the pride of the Trail tribe. Before she could, her legs gave out and she collapsed. Chloe rushed over, wondering if the poison had returned, but Sasha weakly admitted her stomach was empty, and she could not move. Her body had burned too many calories. Chloe mentioned having some jerky, but when Phone pulled out ration food, she muttered that it was practically torture. After eating jerky and regaining strength, Sasha rested. Watching her, Phone reflected quietly. He wondered whether this path was truly a ninja's path, but instead of strictly following old rules and staying in the shadows where he saw nothing, he wanted to find his own way, one where he could stand beside his friends. Later that night, at the outskirts of Gildia, a girl arrived. She sensed the air and muttered that this must be the town of evil she smelled. Declaring herself the ninja Karen, she vowed to punish every villain she found there. Phone and Chloe sat inside a restaurant. Phone looked surprised as he saw the countless food items laid out. Chloe encouraged him to order as much as he wanted, explaining that the giant lizard from the Goblin Cave had been identified as a rare rock lizard, and when it was dug up, the guild rewarded both of them with a large bonus. She added that because of that, they were gaining attention, and it might bring good job offers soon. Phone replied that since he was the guy fired by Clark, maybe others were only teasing them. Chloe insisted that it wasn't true. Right then, Sasha approached and casually stated that Clark was weak anyway, so it wasn't a big deal. Chloe questioned why Sasha was still there. Sasha explained she hadn't fought Phone yet and would follow them until she could beat him. Chloe welcomed her, saying that more people in the party meant better quest rewards. Phone then said that they should earn more than the hero and show the whole guild what they could do. As Chloe walked by, she brushed against a man and apologized. The man insulted her, calling her a name. Sasha immediately stood up, but Phone stopped her, saying that those men were from the Marumo family and that it was better to avoid trouble. Sasha asked who they were, and Phone explained that they were a gang of thugs in the town. They watched as the gang confronted an old man, demanding repayment and smashing his head into a table when he couldn't pay. Suddenly, Karen appeared and told them to stop, threatening to use ninjutsu. Phone froze for a moment, shocked that she mentioned ninjutsu, wondering if he was not the only ninja left. The Marumo gang leader mocked her, asking what she was talking about. Karen threw what she called a ninja star, though the men complained she had only thrown a rock. Karen shouted that it was a shuriken and urged the old man to escape. The gang got angry, but Karen leaped over them and began attacking. As they collapsed, she declared she wasn't done yet and pulled something out. The men panicked, asking if it was a fire pill bug. Karen performed a ninja art fire style attack, throwing it at them and setting them ablaze. The gang screamed, promising they would never do anything bad again, running around on fire seeking water. When she didn't get a response she liked, she prepared to punish them further. Phone observed, realizing things were escalating, and he didn't want a scene in the city. As Karen prepared a bowling pot jutsu, Phone quickly rushed in and used Earth Style, creating a sandstorm to extinguish the flames. The men sighed in relief, confused by the sudden dirt. Phone apologized, claiming there had been a sandbag nearby and he reacted instinctively. Karen demanded to know what he had just done. Phone told her to stop and asked what right she had to punish them like that. Karen questioned who he was and accused him of being one of the villains, declaring that anyone who committed evil would face ninjutsu. Phone stared at her in confusion, thinking that what she was using were just rocks and bugs, and wondered where she had even learned about ninjutsu. Karen declared that she was the 12th ninja and that she would defeat Phone. As the gang members fled, she leaped onto a rooftop. Phone shouted that she wouldn't escape and immediately chased after her. In his mind, he repeated the movement technique she used, convinced she truly knew what a ninja was. He wondered how she knew such skills, since only people from his village should recognize them. Karen stopped and remarked that Phone was persistent, claiming she would finish him herself. As she charged toward him, Phone suddenly caught a strange scent and questioned it, thinking it resembled that of a beast. He demanded to know where she learned ninjutsu. When she refused to answer, he stated that he was a third-generation ninja. If she were really a ninja, she should know his name. Karen insisted she had never heard of him and accused him of lying to deceive her. She then pulled out a firebug and rushed forward. Phone's patience snapped. He told her that was enough and ordered her to stop bothering people with fake ninjutsu. Drawing his blade, he unleashed conflagration flame. Karen was struck, fell, and shifted form. Phone noted that his attack had been rough, but if he hadn't blasted her away, her fire would have caused a much larger incident. He also confirmed his suspicion. Her abilities were not true ninjutsu. Chloe and Sasha arrived, worried about Phone, but paused when they saw that Karen had transformed into a beast. Phone was confused, thinking she had been a demi-human, but realizing now that she was something else entirely. Karen awakened in her beast form, tied up and hanging upside down. She protested angrily, accusing them of exposing her true identity. Phone replied calmly that if she were truly a ninja, she would know the rules. The existence of ninjas must remain hidden, and ninjutsu must never be revealed openly. That was the law. Karen trembled, asking if Phone was truly a ninja. He confirmed it, and asked how she learned about ninjas in the first place. Karen claimed she would rather die than speak to a villain. Sasha stepped forward, praising Karen's bravery and saying that if she preferred death over dishonor, then Sasha would carry out her wish. She even asked Karen for her last words. Terrified, Karen immediately changed her mind and begged to be released, promising to talk. They lowered her, and Chloe remarked that the kid had less spirit than expected. Phone approached Karen gently, explaining that they were only adventurers and that he believed no ninjas had survived besides him. He wanted to hear her story. Karen agreed. She revealed that she was a magical beast called enro, named after her blue form. She lived peacefully with her flock, but they were all weak magical beasts. One day, a powerful monster attacked, killing all of her companions. Alone and afraid, she hid deep in the remote mountains where no humans traveled, struggling to survive. One night, she heard chaos in the distance and found a group of heavily armed humans fleeing. Curious and trembling with fear, she followed the noise and found someone collapsed there. Karen continued her story. She explained that on the night she collapsed, she had been attacked by someone and left for dead, and that attacker was the previous human Karen. She recalled asking the beast to open a scroll, and when the beast opened it, a flash erupted and the two of them merged. That was how she ended up turning into a human. Chloe was shocked. She had never even heard of magic like that. Karen explained that the girl had shown her a scroll that could turn a magical beast into a human, calling it a forbidden ninjutsu. Karen stated that she took in the one calling herself Karen the 11th, and once she became human, she finally understood Karen's words. She learned all sorts of things from her. How to move a human body, stories about different ninja tools, and she had promised to teach the beast her ninjutsu once she recovered. But one day the human Karen was coughing inside the cave, and the beast rushed to her, asking where it hurt and crying. Karen the 12th remembered saying she did not want her to die and pleaded for her not to leave her alone. After the original Karen's death, Karen the 12th adopted her name and decided to become a ninja who would bring villains like the one who killed Karen to justice. Phone thought to himself that there was no way a ninja would lose to some thief, and if attacked, they would destroy their ninja tools before letting them be stolen, especially if it was a forbidden jujutsu scroll. Beast Karen then shouted that if Phone had a problem, he should say it. Phone responded that a ninja who could not control their violent passion was worthless, and she needed to realize her actions were nothing more than self-righteous justice, and that those who flaunt power eventually drown in it. Karen became angry. Phone added that his own master had taught him that the destination of arrogance is ruin. Suddenly, Karen transformed back into her human form, broke free of the ropes and left, stating that they had let their guard down. Later, Karen sat on a street, thinking about being lectured by a villain. She told herself she was a fine ninja, recognized by Karen, and she would show them the next time they met. But then she noticed her bag was missing, the bag that held Karen's precious belongings. She spotted a gang and grew frightened. As they beat her, she remembered how the 11th Karen never screamed no matter how much pain she was in. Maruma eventually ordered his men to stop, saying it would be troublesome if she died. But suddenly his men panicked, shocked to see Karen transform into a beast. Elsewhere, at Marumo's place, he asked his subordinates whether they had managed to load the goods into the basement warehouse. One of the men, teasing Karen in her beast form, questioned where she was and what they intended to do. They replied that she really could talk and asked if she truly was a demon beast capable of turning human. They added that she would be auctioned off tonight on the black market. A creature like her would fetch a very high price. Karen became terrified. As the men mocked her, Phone suddenly appeared behind them. Meanwhile, Chloe and Sasha arrived at Marumo's wearing dresses. Marumo stated he had not requested dancers, and Chloe politely asked if they could perform a dance for him. Marumo replied that he had no time to watch a dance from a potato-faced woman and a muscle-bound freak. Chloe responded that they could not go home unless they secured a job. Marumo told his men to finish loading the goods from the basement into the carriage. Chloe insisted they watch her dance first. When she performed, all the men were disgusted by it, and declared that they would go work after all. Their Phone knocked the men out and freed Karen. Karen thought to herself that he had appeared so quickly, in less than 30 seconds. She tried to act tough, saying she didn't need his help anyway and could handle the place alone. Phone replied that if she wanted to call herself a ninja, then she shouldn't get caught by people like this, and that if she was still immature, she shouldn't pretend otherwise. At the very least, he said, she should be humble. He told her to stop playing pretend if she couldn't back it up. Right now, she was only embarrassing herself. Karen froze in place, and Phone gave a small smile, saying the lecture would have to wait because he was worried about the other two's plan. A man suddenly shouted that things were bad and called for Boss Marumo, reporting that vigilantes were at the black market venue. Soon, a crowd rushed toward the house. Marumo ordered his men to move the goods from the warehouse through the back and hide them quickly. Sasha asked Chloe if she was done, and Chloe replied by telling Sasha to go ahead. Sasha then picked up a table and threw it at the men, shouting that she wouldn't let them reach the underground Shizuko warehouse. Meanwhile, at the warehouse, as the men loaded the stock, Phone appeared. The men demanded to know who he was, where he came from, and whether he was with those women. Phone pulled out a cloth and used it like a weapon, swiftly attacking them. Karen, watching him, thought in awe that it was just a bandana, yet he could fight like this, a real ninja. Marumo arrived, noting aloud that the cloth was a scarf made from salamander leather. Phone replied that as expected of a black market boss, Marumo had a sharp eye. Marumo then drew his sword and questioned whether Phone was the one who reported them to the vigilantes, asking what lies he had told to make them act, since Marumo had convinced everyone they were simply a normal shop until now. Phone answered that all they wanted was their friend back. Marumo swung his sword, asking if he meant that monster, only to realize it was a hologram. Phone struck from behind, slashing Marumo's hand with a kunai. He tied Marumo's hands using the kunai and said he had a favor to ask of that Yumaneko, to stop this life of crime. He added that Marumo would surely be taken to the capital and never return, and then left. Later, Karen asked them why they saved her, admitting she was far from a ninja and only an amateur. Phone explained that this was exactly why he acted. He didn't believe she should die for a ninja's mistake. He said that because he was a ninja, he had to save at least one life in front of him, and that letting someone live was harder than killing, a lesson his master taught him. He hoped Karen would understand that teaching and handed her bag back. Karen lit up with happiness and asked where he got it. Phone simply said it was a ninja secret and walked away. Chloe then called out to him and remarked that there must be a reason he cared so much about that kid, someone who would do anything if ordered. Karen, crying quietly, listened. Phone said it was like looking at his old self. Chloe insisted that this was enough. Phone was different now. Sasha added that Phone had a good heart. Phone chuckled, saying it felt like having a big sister, which made Chloe embarrassed. He quickly apologized. Suddenly, he felt a whisper behind him, asking if he was enjoying playing pretend. The voice asked why the previous Karen had run away from the ninja village, what Phone had done there, and whether he had forgotten. Phone stiffened in fear. Chloe noticed his reaction and asked what was wrong, calling his name with concern. Phone was asleep in his room when someone quietly entered and stared at him. Startled, he suddenly woke up and shouted. Chloe rushed in, asking what had happened. She froze, feeling awkward when she saw Phone on top of Karen, who was desperately asking him to let her go. Later, at breakfast, Chloe and Sasha kept staring at Phone. He insisted that it was all a misunderstanding, explaining that he had simply defended himself after being attacked in his sleep. Karen, however, proudly commented that it was just as expected from him, that he had no openings even when asleep. She declared that she had deeply reflected on her actions and had thought carefully about his words from the previous night. With confidence, she announced her decision to study under him and become a true ninja worthy of her predecessor's name. Sasha remarked that a true ninja would not shout their identity out loud. Karen sat down, and Chloe stated that Phone should probably teach Karen basic human common sense as well, since she did not seem to have anywhere else to go. Phone admitted that he was happy about her determination, but said he could not accept her. Only those who had completed the designated trials could be taught ninja techniques, and only the master ninja had the right to teach them. He also mentioned that he did not know all ninja arts and could risk teaching her incorrectly. If the previous master Karen, or his own master, the previous Phone, were still alive, it would be different. But with the ninja village gone, he could not take that role. Chloe then asked what had happened to his hometown, but before he could answer, the receptionist arrived and asked if they were ready, saying a request had come specifically for them. Soon after, they were riding in a cart. Chloe pointed toward Mount Genadan and explained that their client was the lord of the village at its base. She noted that receiving personal requests now was a good sign, and guessed they had Phone to thank for it. Karen brightened, calling it fitting for Master Phone. Phone questioned why she had followed them. Chloe answered that since he refused to take her as an apprentice, staying close would at least stop her from causing trouble while pretending to be a ninja. She encouraged Karen to work hard so that Phone would eventually acknowledge her. Karen agreed enthusiastically, and Sasha commented that Chloe was good at motivating people. When they arrived, they were shocked to see a huge pile of defeated magical beasts. A man approached, asking if this was Chloe's party and thanking them for waiting. Chloe asked about the mountain of beasts, and he apologized for the unpleasant sight. He explained that Mount Genadan was home to many magical creatures, and lately the village had been suffering heavy damage. The Adventurers Guild sent too many extermination forces, and they ended up hunting more than requested, leaving the dismantling work piled up. The man then guided them to an inn and told them his wife would join them shortly. When Chloe walked inside, she froze once again. Clark's party was there. Clark remarked that the guild had been considerate in sending someone to help carry the load, explaining that with so many monsters to clean up, hauling the corpses back to the village had been a real struggle. The village representative thanked Clark, saying that thanks to his efforts, peace would soon return to the mountain. Mary greeted Fawn happily, and Jasmine teased her by asking if she was the one who called Fawn there. Mary, flustered, told her not to phrase it like that, but admitted that they had been saying they wished Fawn was with them and were ready to start the next job. Chloe immediately questioned if they were always so selfish, and Mary shot back that she was speaking to Fawn, which made Chloe visibly irritated. At that moment, an elderly man entered, apologizing for the wait. He asked if he had interrupted anything and introduced himself as Mazzo, the one who had nominated the request. Clark was stunned, confirming if Lord Mazzo was truly the person who summoned them there. Mazzo nodded, expressing surprise that Fawn was an acquaintance of the hero. He then explained that he had gathered them all for a particular reason, asking them to indulge an old man's desire. Mazzo spoke of a mythical beast said to have lived on Mount Genadan for 1,000 years, the Golden Lion. According to legend, it commanded lightning, was impossible to approach, and appeared only once every few decades. Recently, the mountain had shown signs from the legends, like continuous thunder. As a collector, Mazzo declared that he absolutely had to obtain the Golden Lion, perfectly preserved, and asked them to retrieve its body without a single scratch. He then turned to Fawn, saying he had heard about him through someone in the same trade, and learned that Fawn once retrieved a great wolf's fang, almost intact. Mazzo handed over a bag of money for their preparations. Clark confidently stated that they would handle it, insisting that there was no way a third-rate party could take on such a request. Mazzo added that the hero party had already been asked to subjugate magical beasts at the mountain's base, but with Clark's overwhelming swordsmanship, he feared even the Golden Lion would be reduced to a mangled mess. Clark replied that if Mazzo wanted a perfect trophy, then that was what he would deliver. Jasmine, not fully understanding the conversation, simply concluded she just needed to hold back. Mazzo declared that he would commission both parties, saying they could complete the mission separately or cooperate, and if they defeated the Golden Lion together, each group would receive the full reward. That night, Fawn quietly checked his tools. Karen, still furious, complained that those so-called heroes had driven Fawn out, calling it unforgivable. Fawn calmly reminded her that he had told her before to control her emotions. He reassured her that it was fine now, saying that seeing Karen and Chloe get angry for his sake proved he had friends who truly cared. He thought to himself that when his village was destroyed, and when he was exiled by Clark, he had been alone countless times, but now he had people who relied on him. Karen then asked if he had been about to say earlier that he lost his home, his family, and his friends. Fawn explained that his village had been attacked, and his master had helped him escape. He survived, and perhaps the previous Karen had been escaping at the same time. The pursuer she encountered might have been part of the same enemy forces. He added that for a ninja, such a fate was not surprising. Their work meant they could be targeted for revenge at any moment. To him, it was simply that someone who was never meant to exist had disappeared. That was the life of a ninja. Karen said that both Master Karen and her master had been precious to her, and that was exactly why she felt that way. Fawn replied that if they planned to catch the Golden Lion, they would need many traps and tools. He added that he would teach her how to make a tranquilizer and asked if she could assist him. Meanwhile, Mary was watching Fawn through her foresight ability and complained that it looked boring. The next day, Clark's team continued battling numerous beasts. Clark urged his party not to waste time on weaker creatures and ordered them to hurry toward the summit, where lightning kept striking. Later, Fawn's group arrived and saw the aftermath. Countless beast corpses scattered everywhere. Chloe commented, shocked by the enormous number. Fawn agreed, saying the mountain was terrifying, packed with a horde of magical beasts of many kinds, forming a strange ecosystem. Jasmine turned back toward them, telling them not to fall behind and not to dare hold her back. Flo responded that Jasmine must be implying she wouldn't repeat her mistake from the two-headed boar incident. Fawn quietly confirmed it. Suddenly, a massive eagle lunged toward Clark. Fawn remarked that Clark was strong, someone who had mastered martial skills. learned magic, and channeled sword ki to push a weapon's power beyond its limits. That he thought was something only a true hero could accomplish. Clark cut down the eagle with a single strike. Phone then warned him that the area was prone to rock slides and told him to be cautious. Clark acknowledged the warning, but secretly whispered something to Mary, who then cast a spell, Debacle Landslide. A sudden landslide roared down toward Phone's group. Phone immediately instructed everyone to get behind him. Shock filled their faces as the boulders crashed down over them. Patris rushed forward in panic. Clark commented casually that landslides were frightening. When Patris insisted they had to save Phone, Clark claimed it was an accident, saying the impact from the large eagle falling must have triggered the rocks and Phone had simply been unlucky enough to be caught. Suddenly, the top boulders shifted. Phone pushed them aside and stood up. He immediately noticed Chloe's severe injuries. Karen rose shakily, saying she thought she was going to die, and Sasha admitted she had hit her head. Phone quickly gave everyone healing potions. Karen then stared at his arms and asked if he had really blocked all the falling rocks with his bare hands. Phone answered that it was much easier than the training where he had to dodge 1,000 kunai. Karen exclaimed that Phone didn't even have a single broken bone. Phone's expression hardened, and he glared at Clark. Clark stared back in silence. Then the atmosphere shifted. Suddenly, they all noticed the golden lion appearing before them. Mazo stood by the window, watching the view outside. Far across the mountains, the golden lion appeared before Clark and Phone. Clark ordered everyone to retreat, but as the group began to move, the golden lion struck him with lightning. Phone immediately realized that this creature was not a simple beast that merely produced lightning. It was using magic, and a magical beast showing intelligence on this level should have been impossible. Karen shouted that they were surrounded by magical beasts, and Sasha quickly stood up. At that moment, a booming voice echoed, declaring that their leader would pass judgment on the intruders of the mountain, those who had slain so many of their kind. Karen wondered what the beasts were saying, and Phone stepped forward. He understood that this was a trial under the mountain's law. If the golden lion intended to continue until they were all killed, he accepted the challenge. Lightning struck at Phone, but he dodged and prepared to charge with a kunai. Before he could reach the lion, another lightning strike knocked his weapon away. The lion followed up with a powerful blow, pushing Phone back. Phone realized that weapons would be useless. They would only conduct lightning. Even if he avoided the lightning, a direct attack would follow, leaving him unable to counter. Dragging the fight out any longer would be dangerous. He decided to end it in one move. Taking a stance, Phone dashed forward. He announced that even rainwater could be a weapon. The Suikenjutsu of thorny rain, and the water pierced into the golden lion, wounding it. Then he shifted into another stance and unleashed his secret ninja art. In a flash, the golden lion was sent flying. Phone believed he had secured victory. Karen, arriving breathless, asked what he had just done. It was too fast for her to see. Phone explained that it was a secret ninjutsu technique, 8 extremities, 8 pounds, striking 8 vital points at once to seal the opponent's movements. Chloe remarked that it was incredible how he had captured the golden lion without a single scratch and urged to move the beast before Clark and the others regained consciousness. But Phone hesitated. They soon noticed other magical beasts gathering to protect the golden lion. Phone then shared his thoughts. He wanted to leave the golden lion here. He believed this creature had shaped this mountain into a place where many species of magical beasts coexisted, thus forming a delicate ecosystem. Their presence had likely disturbed that balance, and the golden lion acted only to protect its territory and its kind. Chloe asked what would happen if the magical beasts lost their leader. Phone responded that this land was a point where people and magical beasts often crossed paths, and without the golden lion's authority, the beasts might begin attacking humans. Chloe interrupted Phone, pointing out that doing this would mean going back on their request, but she supposed there was no choice. Failing a request would damage their reputation. Sasha agreed with Phone, and Karen remarked that their master's compassion was truly magnificent. Phone thanked everyone. Suddenly, Clark woke up and protested, asking what Phone was deciding on his own. If they didn't want the golden lion, then he would take it. Before he could move, Chloe walked up, punched him, and sent him flying, saying she felt about 0.1% better now. Phone insisted he couldn't return empty-handed and wanted at least a little proof. Karen told him to leave it to her and began speaking in the beast language. The surrounding beasts stepped back. Phone approached the golden lion, assuring it that everything was fine and acknowledging it had only been protecting the mountain from them. He collected a few strands of the lion's hair in a small bottle. Then Phone requested that, in the future, if other adventurers came without harmful intentions, the lion should send them back safely. Karen translated his words for the lion. Phone then told the group they should head back, and he would carry Clark and the others, with Sasha assisting. Chloe asked whether the magical beasts would eat the unconscious members if they left them behind, but Phone replied that they could not cause more trouble for the beasts. On the way back, Karen noticed a small chick behind them. She wondered whether its nest had been caught in a landslide, and if this was the child of the battle hawk the hero had slain earlier. She gently picked it up and took it with her. Later, at Mazo's place, Mazo summarized the situation, that the golden lion commanded the mountain's magical beasts and appeared because too many beasts had been killed. Phone explained that the lion's fur was the only prize he brought back. If they had killed the lion in that state, the mountain's beasts would have rampaged in anger, harming the people living around it. Phone stepped forward, saying that the decision had been his, and if Mazo intended to penalize anyone for the request's failure, he should punish him alone. Chloe immediately disagreed, saying they all shared responsibility. Mazo stated that the request had technically failed. That fact would not change. However, the lion's fur alone held great value, and he would purchase it for 2 gold coins. More importantly, Phone had not only considered the reward, but also the safety of the village. As the Lord, Mazo said he must show respect. He declared the request not a failure and officially withdrew it. Clark grumbled that all their efforts had been wasted. Chloe countered by pointing out that Clark had used magic on the Rocky Mountain and buried them, and the magical beast, alive. She reminded him who had carried everyone back while they lay unconscious, but then brushed it off as merely thinking out loud. She told them they would go prepare to leave. Clark shouted that they had already done more than enough for Mazo, since they had exterminated the demonic beasts in the mountains. Mazo calmly replied that he should have listened to the village chief's concerns, saying the extermination was overkill, and admitted the mistake was his. He then ordered Clark to hurry and prepare the reward money for the team. Clark grew furious, and, just as he moved to attack Mazo, Phone stepped in and twisted Clark's arm. Clark demanded to know what Phone thought he was doing. Phone stated that he did not care what happened to him if he were the only one involved. That was the way of a shinobi. Clark questioned the word shinobi, and Phone asked if he truly did not understand that he was angry, and had been for a long time. Phone reminded him that Clark tried to kill his friends, and no matter what excuse Clark offered, Phone would not forgive him. The only reason he had saved Clark, and why he was doing nothing to him now, was because he followed the teaching of never killing. Phone told him to think very carefully about what that truly meant. Clark trembled, fell to the ground in fear, and could not respond. Later, as they prepared to leave, a caretaker wished the group safe travels, warning that magical beasts might appear on the road. He mentioned that he had encountered one that very morning. It had stared at him intensely, then vanished in a flash, and he considered himself lucky to have escaped. Phone simply smiled. Nearby, Clark lay collapsed on the ground. Mary approached and asked whether he was all right. As Clark muttered angrily about Phone, Mary urged him to compose himself, reminding him that he was the hero and she would never lose to someone like Phone. Clark then swore he would make Phone regret ever defying him, shouting that he would absolutely, definitely crush him. As the chapter opened, a man sat blindfolded, bleeding and writhing in pain. Several ninjas surrounded him. One observed that this one could not endure the suffering either, while another reassured Keijecho not to be afraid, insisting that if this ritual succeeded, he would finally be done with the miserable life of digging through trash. Keijecho replied that he needed a stronger body so that Master Ninja Cage Tora could use it as a vessel. Suddenly, Master Hanzo appeared. The ninjas greeted him politely. Hanzo reminded them of the Shinobi Code, that the orders of their lord and masters were absolute, and asked if they agreed. When they confirmed, Hanzo demanded they prove it. If they were truly shinobi, he said, they should throw themselves off the cliff and die. A young boy stood among them. Hanzo asked for his name, but the boy answered that he had none. Without hesitation, he leaped from the cliff. Hanzo smiled, remarking that anyone would assume he had died. More importantly, he pointed out that the boy had no name and no life of his own, calling it a fitting end for a ninja who existed only as a tool. The boy, much younger then, survived the fall, though he was wounded. Another ninja watching commented that the kid was quite the perfect specimen and doubted even Lord Hanzo would willingly let him go. He declared that he wanted the boy as his disciple. Suddenly, Phone woke up, realizing it had been a dream. He looked at the marks on his hand, then noticed noise outside his window and wondered what could be happening so early. When he stepped outside, he learned a third missing adventurer had been found murdered. A man explained that this one had been discovered near the Western Mountain Hut, and that the body lay beneath every other corpse. He also mentioned a strange lattice-like magic circle he had never seen before, wondering aloud if it meant a death curse had been used. Phone was shocked, questioning whether it could be related to ninja techniques. He suddenly felt the crowd's eyes on him and wondered about the looks he was getting. Clark's party was also present, and people murmured about the town's hero, saying they were counting on him. Phone thought about the hand signs used in ninjutsu, the kuji, and how they had been carved at the scene. With 3 victims already, he wondered what was truly happening in this town. He then put on a mask and quietly slipped away, unaware that a knight had noticed him leaving. Clark commented that no one would willingly get involved in such a disturbing case, and Sarah replied that people probably saw them as jacks of all trades. At that moment, someone called for the hero. Clark turned and saw 2 small children in capes. They claimed they had seen the person who killed the man and begged for Clark's help, saying someone had been chasing them ever since, and they were only children. Clark told them to submit a formal request at the guild, reminding them to prepare the full reward money, otherwise they could speak to the vigilantes instead. Clark's team walked away, and one of the children anxiously asked the other what they should do now. He wondered if they really had to bring the hero for the ritual, and grew scared at the thought of failing again. The other child, Keiichio, reassured him that they would do what they always did, wait until the hero was alone and then use the bracelet of submission. A knight suddenly approached from behind, questioning whether what the children had just said was true, and if they knew who was behind the murders. He added that if they did, he would act as their bodyguard in exchange for information. Without hesitation, the child activated the bracelet and used it on the knight, thanking him as the knight collapsed in pain. Back at the guild, Chloe wondered aloud about the quest, confidently saying that if all 4 of them participated, they could defeat even a demon beast. She froze when she realized Phone was missing. Karen explained that he was not in his room either. Chloe stressed that this could be a problem, but Clark appeared from behind, snatched the quest, and casually announced that Phone had already left town. When he asked Jasmine to take the quest with him, Chloe angrily accused him of trying to steal it. Clark brushed her off, insisting quests were taken on a first-come, first-served basis. He grabbed Chloe's hand and warned her not to think he would always go easy on her. Karen and Sasha reacted with anger, but Clark laughed it off, telling them not to be upset since there were other jobs available, and walked away smugly. The group then pursued another quest. Sasha called out that they had successfully flushed the beast out. As she killed rats, Karen used fire-style magic, and Sasha immediately begged her to stop, saying she hated fire and that the only thing she wanted burned was Clark. She asked Chloe whether she agreed, but Chloe stood quietly, lost in thought. Concerned, Sasha asked if she was alright. Chloe apologized, saying they must be bored fighting large rats, but they should be able to collect the required pelts by sunset. She added that if they were gathering so many, they would likely have to camp out, and if Phone were here, they would be done much faster. Karen smiled and agreed, then called out to Michael, a large bird. Sasha and Chloe were stunned when Michael swooped down and hugged Karen. Sasha asked if he was really a battlehawk, and Chloe wondered if this was the creature Karen had found on Mount Genadan, telling her she should have left it there. Karen replied that she couldn't abandon him. She transformed into her beast form and explained that Michael had promised not to attack humans. Usually he simply flew around nearby. She described him as a growing boy who loved mice and pleaded for them to think of this as helping him. Flo eventually agreed. Soon after, Phone rushed over, apologizing for being late. As they snacked, Chloe jokingly called him a late ninja, and Karen proudly announced that she had finished her task before her master arrived. Sasha declared she didn't need a party at all, prompting Phone to panic and apologize again. Late that night, they camped beneath the stars. Phone sat quietly by the fire. Chloe asked where he had been all day and wondered if he had simply lost track of time, gathering medicinal herbs. Phone confirmed he had gone gathering, but then asked if she was aware of the recent adventure murders. He explained that he had visited the scene and found signs of kuji hand seals used by ninjas, along with the burnt flesh smell from victims and the scent of someone else's blood. It reminded him of a particular ninjutsu. When Chloe asked if there could be another ninja besides him, Phone admitted the possibility was high. He explained that after his village was destroyed, he had searched for nearly a year, but never found survivors or traces of the enemy. With that history and the situation involving Karen, he felt certain something larger was happening, something he had yet to uncover. Chloe wondered aloud if someone from Phone's village would really go around murdering people like that. Phone firmly denied it. He said that while assassinations did exist, a cleanup job like this was the lowest kind of work, and no true village ninja would stoop to something so disgraceful. Chloe then asked if Phone had been desperately searching for answers, and Phone commented that she seemed to have caused trouble for Clark and the guild members. Chloe said she didn't care, she simply couldn't stand men like Clark, the type who laughed while trapping others. She explained that her parents had been adventurers, and once, their party became greedy over the reward. On the way home, they were tricked and abandoned in the mountains. She said it took 2 weeks before their bodies were found, torn apart and eaten by mountain beasts. It had been a horrifying sight, and just like that, she was on her own at 15. She noted that surviving alone at such a young age hadn't been easy. Chloe continued, saying that if ninjas were watching them, they needed to fight back and use ninjas in return. She declared that if she were solo, there would be no strings attached after a job, but being in a party meant they stayed in one town and inevitably got tangled in others' problems. Still, she accepted it as the price they paid for relying on their party members, and that it worked both ways. Phone responded that everyone had their own way of life and had to protect themselves. He added that changing one's way of living wasn't a bad thing, something his master used to tell him. Chloe asked about his parents and whether they had been ninjas too. Phone explained that most children in his village had been orphans or kidnapped. All he remembered of those early days was feeling cold, so when someone extended a hand, gave them a name, and offered a place to belong, anyone would take it. Suddenly, Phone stood up and turned around. Chloe asked what happened. Phone replied that he sensed something like a distant scream. At that same time, Clark's team had just defeated a dragon beast. The children appeared before them, and Keiichiro commanded the Black Knight, still controlled by the Bracelet of Submission, to capture the hero. The children and the knight dragged Clark into a cave. When Clark begged to be let go, they instead threw him inside and tied him up. Confused and angry, he questioned who they were and why they would do something like this. One child pulled out a bottle, and Clark wondered aloud if they were the ones responsible for the serial murders of adventurers. Keiichiro revealed their intent. They needed Clark to form a blood contract with Keiichiro. Meanwhile, Phone was rushing toward them, convinced he had heard a scream coming from that direction. A moment later, he reached Clark's party, and Mary immediately noticed his arrival. Phone explained that he had heard a scream and came near quickly, then asked what had happened. Just then, Chloe and the others arrived on Michael, the Battlehawk. Michael questioned who Phone was, and Sasha remarked with frustration that she had rushed there only to find the so-called heroes. Phone asked where Clark was. Patrice answered that a swordsman dressed entirely in black had attacked and captured him. She explained that they tried to fight the knight but were completely defeated, utterly outmatched, and she had never seen a swordsman that skilled, not even in Gildia. Sarah insisted they had to hurry and chase him, or they would be in serious trouble, because the child with the swordsman had said earlier that morning he knew who the murderer was. Phone was shocked to hear that. He instructed Sasha and the others to use Michael to call the vigilance from Gildia, then asked Chloe to come with him to search for Clark. As Phone and Chloe searched, she mentioned that Phone had just said he had a ninjutsu in mind, and he confirmed it. He explained that in the ninja village, master ninja were permitted to take apprentices, and above them existed the legendary ninja, a rank held by only a few in the village's history. When they took office, those legendary ninja offered their own blood to the village chief, and it was preserved as a medium for activating a forbidden jutsu. Only the chief knew its location. That jutsu could only be used when the village faced destruction, and the blood served a specific purpose tied to it. Back in the cave, Clark shouted angrily, demanding they stop and reminding them he was the most famous person in Gildia. One child questioned if he truly was the hero, which was exactly why they brought him here. Keiichiro explained that through a blood contract, he would bestow Kagitora's power into Clark's body. Kagitora had been an exceptionally strong warrior, and only someone with a body and soul capable of matching his strength could withstand the power of his blood. Those who could not would die, which was why they had failed so many times. The child then remarked that a strong hero like Clark should make a fitting vessel. Terrified, Clark argued that none of this made sense and demanded to know their real goal. The children froze and replied that they wished they knew the answer themselves. They insisted the ritual had to succeed, otherwise they would starve to death out here. That was why they were counting on the hero. One child urged Keiichiro to hold back, while Clark yelled at them to stop. Suddenly, arrows struck Keiichiro, and Chloe appeared, warning that the next shot would hit the other child if anyone moved. Phone used his ninja art, Sandstorm, causing the children to panic, unsure of what was happening. Phone stated that he had heard everything and had already destroyed the Kuji formation, meaning they could no longer complete the ritual. He also noted that he knew they weren't the actual culprits and demanded to know who had given them Kagetora's blood. Clark, panicking, begged Phone to stop fooling around and just kill him, insisting that he was the one suffering here. As Clark complained, Phone suddenly sensed someone above and called out, recognizing the presence as Ren. Immediately, a fire attack burst down from above, and a voice claimed that it had fought everyone here before. Phone told Clark to move away quickly. Right then, the child with the bottle rushed toward Clark, but stumbled and accidentally drank the blood himself. Phone was stunned. This was a forbidden technique meant to wager a trained ninja's life for power. There was no way a child's body could handle the strength of a master ninja. He thought to himself that Master Kagetora was an ancient shinobi, so there was no way to predict how this would turn out. Perhaps the boy's spirit had been drawn to the dormant power. The boy rose, declaring that this was Kagetora's power, and turned toward Clark, who trembled in terror. In an instant, Kagechiyo vanished and reappeared near Phone to attack, moving far faster than before. Phone dodged, realizing just how dangerous this had become. Kagechiyo drew a dagger, declaring his intent to kill, and Phone responded by pulling out his kunai. Kagechiyo immediately called for the knight to hurry and help defeat Phone, demanding that he be saved. Klo fired 3 arrows at the knight, but he shattered them and rushed toward Phone. Phone made a quick judgment. Even with the forbidden jutsu, Kagechiyo still had the body of a child, so neutralizing him first was the priority. Phone lunged forward and pushed the boy, attempting a secret ninja technique, but froze as Kagechiyo effortlessly dodged. In that moment, Phone truly understood the physical ability of a master ninja. This was not going to be easy. Suddenly, both Kagechiyo and the knight charged him at once. Phone readied his kunai, only to be shocked when the knight turned his blade toward Kagechiyo instead. The knight declared he had had enough of Kagechiyo's nonsense and asked Phone if he could still fight. He removed his black helmet, revealing his identity. He announced that he was one of the king's swords, a knight dispatched from the royal capital of Nereos, Angela Vincent Barbarossa. He then ordered Kagechiyo to prepare for the consequences of his actions.